This Honourable House is now in Standing Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman, Head 83, Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Nutritional Security, in the amount of $85,429,960.
Mr. Chairman, I seek permission for my team to join me as presented.
Permission so granted. Good morning, all honorable members. Let me take this opportunity, excuse me, to welcome public officers from the Ministry of Agriculture and Food and Nutritional Security to the Well of Parliament today to participate in these estimates for Head 83. I will go through what the rules governing this debate are for the benefit of the public officers. The honorable members of the House are fully aware. Honorable Minister, you will be given 10 minutes for your opening remarks, and this will be followed by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Minister, for any questions that you are asked, you have 5 minutes to respond. Any questions pass on to the public officers, you have 3 minutes to respond. Let me remind honorable members that you have 3 minutes in lead up to your question, and you are allowed 3 supplementary questions. And in the interest of time, so that we proceed and we get through the estimates as we ought to, I would request that you be as concise as possible and to the point in your various presentations. If that is not the case, then I will do not let it come to the point where I have to intervene and bring the level of order to the proceedings in terms of time. So, Honorable Minister, you can now proceed with your opening remarks.
Chair, I crave your indulgence in introducing the team with me.
Proceed.
To my right is Permanent Secretary Terry Bascom. To my left is Acting Chief Agricultural Officer, Mr. Michael James. To the back, on my right, is Mr. Brett Taylor, who is responsible for our trial crops and cars as in Caribbean Agricultural Research, Central Caribbean Agricultural Research. In the center is Dr. Ambassador Clyde Maskell, who's chairman of BAMC and director on the new BESCO board. Next to him is Mr. Frederick Innes, acting CEO of BADMC. Behind Mr. Innes is Dr. Mark Trotman from Veterinary Services, who's our Chief Veterinary Officer. In the center is Mr. Philip Beckles from Government Analytical Services. Next to him is Annika Roberts-Odo from Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Licensing Authority. Behind her is Dr. Leroy McLean, and he's our consultant on the Black Belly Sheep program. Next to him is Mr. Sherlock King, manager of markets, and next to Mr. King is Mr. Wayne Baker, who is our director of projects in the ministry. The Ministry of Agriculture experienced a number of challenges during the year 2023. But if I were to be brutally honest with all of you and all Barbadians, I'll say to you that when I did a review of agriculture and the entire sector between the year 2008 and 2023, the findings are almost mind-boggling. That you will find that in as much as there have been mass criticism about growing more food in Barbados, particularly since we became government, you would find that we have peaked in our production in 2020, the highest ever in Barbados, at 30 million kilos of production, which was led by sweet potato, 3.54 million kilograms, and this was only outperformed by chives at 3.79 million kilograms. Cucumbers were 1.9 million, lettuce 1.86, and tomato 1.68. All these performed strongly in the year 2020. The year 2021 and 2022, we saw a decline in the sector, and this is attributed solely to the COVID pandemic. During that COVID period, we all recall that the country went into shutdown. People were isolated who had contracted COVID, and therefore it was a time that was very challenging. But on the rebound from COVID, this ministry overall performance for 2023 saw a 24% increase in production in the entire sector. And this is attributed to the work that was done, certainly by the farmers and by the ministry working together with the farmers. The year 2023 gave us an overall production figure of 20.1 million kilograms of agricultural commodities. And whilst I would admit that this level of output is 14.56 million kilograms, or 72% more than 2008 level, it still represents a shortfall of 34% when compared to the year 2020. The items that we produced that resulted in growth of production of 21% over 2022. This expansion in 2023 was led by commodities, all of which surpassed 1 million kilograms, and I named them. Sweet potato, 3.41 million. Chives, 1.96 million. Bananas, 1.84 million. Watermelons, 1.5 million. Onions, 1.33 million. Cucumbers, 1.13 million. And tomatoes, 1.03 million. Together, these 7 commodities accounted for 61% of all crops harvested in 2023. Our livestock sector, Mr. Chairman, when compared, did not do as well. But our livestock sector also held its own, even though we saw declines. And those declines are, as we well know, can be attributed to the climate conditions and we all understand what climate change is doing to agriculture and particularly to livestock in Barbados, given the fact that we have seen that the level of chicken production, even though it was up, we still had challenges. The highest growth rate of 9% was recorded in 2015 for livestock, and chicken production remained the highest and most stable in this category of agricultural produce. So the industry accounted for a total of 235 million kilograms of chicken meat between 2008 and 2023, at an average of 15.7 million kilograms annually. Pork was the next best performer, 42.8 million kilograms over the same period, at an average of 2.85 million kilograms annually, and this was followed by turkey, 3.5 million kilograms, beef 2.6, mutton 1.54. Milk production was at total 82.7 million kilograms between the same measuring period, and egg production 45.7 million kilograms over the same measuring period. In 2023, what we confirmed that domestic livestock sector contracted by 2% when compared to 2022. Turkey and mutton registered the highest growth of 19.5% and 7.4% respectively. Poultry production, which is the mainstay of the industry, was at 102,547 kilograms, lower in 2023 than it was in 2022 when output was 15.6 million kilograms. It is recognized that the industry requires some immediate stimulus in order to remain viable, and some of the initiatives that we are taking to make sure that we give support to the livestock industry will be introduced later. These initiatives will focus on both quality and quantity of animals available to farmers, and that is the reason why we have expanded the amount of incentives that will be made available to farmers, and those incentives will be increased to somewhere to the tune of $7 to $9 million. In addition to that, we are well ahead now with the sugar industry transitioning. We all do know that in December we did transition from a BAMC-owned sugar industry that was costing the government $30 million annually. That is now not the case anymore, and this BAMC now has been transitioned to private ownership with two private companies being formed, BESCO and ABC. They are well on the way to managing this year's sugar harvest. We did put in as a caveat that for this final year, the government will support the sugar harvest, and that BESCO will make its way through renewable energy, the sale of molasses, and the sale of sugar, and therefore they will hold their own and are performing credibly at this point in time. One of the things of significance which I think that every honorable member of this House should recognize and agree to is the government enfranchisement program under this transitioning. The government has sought to give laborers who previously worked in the sugar industry in the fields 20% ownership of the new company, shares that will be given to them that they do not have to purchase. Equally, all of those workers will receive severance pay, and most of them will be brought back to work to start new contracts. So they had a payment in lieu of notice, they had holiday pay, they're getting severance pay, 20% shares that they do not have to purchase, and they're also getting new contracts to continue work. This is what I call the best enfranchisement deal this country has ever seen. In addition to the sugar industry, the government is ramping up its support to make sure that our crop production for non-sugar agriculture gets support. And to this end, the government gave commitment in last year's budget to establish a tissue culture lab, state-of-the-art tissue culture lab, that will put us in a position where we can produce clean planting material for our farmers in Barbados. And we do know that one of the complaints we have had among our farmers, particularly with sweet potato, is that the planting material was not good and we were not getting the yields that we require. I've had a response from a farmer who told me that when he looked at the yields for last year, they are down because of the heat conditions between August and October. This obviously is not sustainable, and we have to respond. In order for us to respond, this tissue culture lab will give us all the clean planting material we're going to need to make sure that we can help our farmers and bring back the yields and production that we are accustomed to in the industry. In addition to that, the tissue culture lab would have with it enough greenhouse spaces so that we can also do tissue culture or yam. Yam, as you know, over a period of time went through challenges, also with crop disease, and cassava as well. Those, in addition to many of the other crops that we have here in Barbados, will help us work towards increasing production as we have planned, and also reaching our 25 by the year 2025 target of reducing imported food or imported primary agricultural produce, because I always have to be careful when we make this point about the food import bill, something that has been treated as an exercise that will suggest that it's only agricultural produce that is imported into Barbados when we speak to a food import bill. And I always have to make the point that our food import bill includes coffee and wine and macaroni, and those things that we do not produce here. And for us to skew a conversation in the direction of agriculture, primary produce only, is in fact wrong and does not do justice to the situation. However, with this new tissue culture lab, we will be introducing a number of things, including an innovation center. At that innovation center, our school children will be introduced to agriculture through technology. And I have heard many times the conversation going in the direction of introducing technology in agriculture. Barbados will be the first in the Caribbean or within CARICOM to have an innovation center which will be sponsored by ICA. And it gives us an opportunity to introduce robotics in agriculture, showing how you can actually plant seeds using robotics, water plants using robotics, and giving our children an inducement and certainly excitement into getting into agriculture rather than the traditional fork and hoe approach. The tissue culture lab equally would provide jobs, particularly for people who live near, and those jobs, of course, we do need. This lab in the first phase is starting at $42.7 million, and in its second phase, $18 million. The first phase would put up the lab, it would put up the water systems, the innovation center, and it would also then improve the home agriculture station where the infrastructure and the electricals and all those things will be improved. And in the second phase, there you will have the greenhouses being introduced. I think, Mr. Chairman, that this project is well ready to start this year. The contract with the developers is before the Solicitor General's chambers, and once that is signed off, we are ready to go. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we can actually get going, hopefully this month or early in April. Our Black Belly Sheep program continues to be working well. We have so far, because Barbados is so small, and let me repeat myself, because Barbados is so small, the target of 1 million heads of black belly sheep will not be achieved on this land space. It therefore means that we had to partner with our CARICOM brothers and sisters. And in so doing, we have worked out with Guyana, which has the land space and the water. We have partnered with Guyana in delivering so far 743 black belly sheep and another 250 to go. Dr. Leroy McLean is spearheading this project. We have not only shipped the sheep, but we have also sent Dr. McLean and his team to Guyana to follow up to make sure that things are going according to plan. When this is done, we are going to get 2 bites at one cherry. One, we will reduce our imports of mutton from New Zealand because it then gives us the opportunity to bring back the carcasses to Barbados for us to do our cuts here in Barbados. And in order for us to satisfy that, we brought in a master butcher from the United Kingdom who did training with our butchers in Barbados and also training at the hospitality school. When this project is finished, Barbados then stands to benefit from the production of pure line black belly sheep, which we would use to maintain that type of variety. And then we would also keep those genetics as our own. Equally, because of the crossing, then we get an opportunity to get a leaner, healthier mutton with less fat. The mutton that we import from New Zealand right now, which is in excess of $14 million, is fatty and most times not even healthy. We've also worked on our legislation, our sanitary and phytosanitary legislation, for all my years coming to this honorable chamber, even before I became an elected member in 2018. I have heard conversations about sanitary and phytosanitary legislation. One previous Minister of Agriculture went the route of doing the pretty larceny legislation, coming to this parliament to boast about it, not recognizing that he didn't do what was required first. That is to give us the sanitary and phytosanitary legislation, which helps us to be able to give people standards and guidelines in the fish markets, help to give standards and guidelines as it relates to slaughtering animals, standards and guidelines as it relates to how we handle plants, crop diseases, pests, and gives us also an opportunity to export from Barbados fish, poultry, and other meats. Mr. Chairman, there's a lot that is going on in the ministry at this point in time, including the Three Houses Spring Act, which we brought a new act to this parliament after 400 years. That act is now proclaimed and is being managed by the whole management of the Three Houses area, and the Three Houses Spring is now being managed by the BADMC. And there are categories of persons who are entitled to using the spring for agriculture purposes. And then, of course, we have just had the regulations completed, which we would take to Cabinet for us to be able to put those regulations in place as well. Of course, we've spoken about the food terminal. We now have on board with us partners from Trinidad and Tobago who have just presented to me last week, and they are ready to spend $50 million in putting up a food terminal in addition to a tourist attraction that is similar to Alibaba, where you come in, you pick up what you want to eat, have it prepared on the spot, and then you can dine and, of course, do shopping. Our prawns project, it was a pilot project. It has proven that it can be successful. We can actually grow prawns in Barbados, and we are at the stage now of reaching out to private individuals to make sure they can participate. And of course, we all know that we had a trial crop of upland rice in Barbados. Who would ever think that we can grow rice in Barbados the way we did? We produce rice in Barbados, and after working with the Chinese to achieve this, we are about now to increase to 20 acres at Pine Basin for us to be able to grow rice in Barbados. Chair, I do recognize that time is upon me, but there's a lot more that I can speak to, and as we go through the session this morning, we will speak to other initiatives that are taking place in the industry. But I crave your indulgence in mentioning that we are reintroducing the country's guild program so that we can ramp up pork production again. And we're also working with the dairy industry. We're gonna work with them and the Brazilians. I met with the Brazilians when they came to Barbados for AgriFest, and they have committed to getting us 320 Gerlando cows in order for us to help the Pine Hill Dairy to ramp up milk production in Barbados. Mr. Chairman, I thank you at this stage and prepared now for questions.
Honourable Minister, move that the head stand part.
I beg to move that head 83 stand part.
Thank you. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman of Committees, and good morning to parliamentary colleagues and members of the public service who are present with us, and good morning to the people of Barbados. I should first begin by observing that over the years, the Ministry of Agriculture has not been one of the celebrated ministries in this country. I suppose that has to do with political value systems, except that in recent years, we have now rediscovered the importance of the ministry. We have now discovered the critical importance of food to this country. Indeed, I'd go beyond the language of critical importance and say that without food, nothing else exists. It used to be said that human attitudes and practices and values are at the heart of culture. I think scientists and social scientists now amend that to say that agriculture, food, is at the heart of culture. And if that is so, we all need to be aware that this ministry is centrally important to the administration of government in this country. How do we feed ourselves? As I've said, nothing happens unless we feed ourselves. And admittedly, it is a topic that is now causing us some fearful concern. The word food security has been introduced into the vocabulary of administrators. Food security. That we now need to be concerned as to our access as a country to this thing without which we cannot live: food. Food security, therefore, becomes a fearful and nervous phrase. Yesterday in Barbados, it rained. And I think we had some rain this morning. And it looks as if, in terms of the weather, we're going to have a fairly bright day. But that is an amateur forecast. The forecast with which I'm more concerned now relates to the future of access to food by Barbadians who live here. I think it was Al Gore, the former American president, who popularized the phrase, Vice President, thank you, who popularized the phrase in the context of his thesis on climate change, inconvenient truths. And I want to remind this minister and this government that truth is important, centrally important in the administration of the affairs of this country. And certainly, truth is important as it relates to food and the access of this country's citizens to food. And if Al Gore has spoken of inconvenient truths, I want to caution this government against raining a torrent of politically convenient untruths on the people of Barbados. Amidst the murmurs, I am willing to repeat, I caution this government against raining a torrent of politically convenient untruths on the people of Barbados. And it is critical, certainly, in relation to the question of food. Minister, do not take that as a personal attack. But we always find shelter from the rain. Where is our shelter from the untruths that are being told to the citizens of this country? I have left 3 days of debate on these estimates. Minister, this is not about you. I have left 3 days of a debate on various heads within these estimates. And on every day that I have left, every day, persons whose work relate to government have telephoned me, have met me, and have expressed concern at this government's propensity for untruth in relation to the administration of affairs of this country. And it is not a moment for murmur. It is not a moment for laughter. It is not a moment for resistance. The people of this country are rained upon by too much untruth in government. I have no intention, Minister, no intention of visiting any ambush upon you when questions come, and questions from me. And I will tell you what I intend to ask you, with confidence that you will tell the truth. I will ask you about the medical marijuana project. Minister, I will ask you about that. And I will give you and your team time to prepare the answer. And when you tell the truth, there is no need to prepare an answer. The people of this country needs to know whether the industry is dead or alive. Whether the large investments, financial investments, and time expended on an industry, whether those investments have yielded any profit. And if the industry is dead, Minister, tell the people of this country the truth. It rained yesterday, but we want the truth to reign today. The other question that I will raise, and I think you raised it in your presentation, and I'm obliged to you for the details of the number of sheep that were sent to Guyana, and that you intend to send another 240, rounding off 250, rounding off at about 1,000 sheep exported from this country to Guyana. And I will ask you when the time comes to report on the success or the detailed activity of that project. I will ask you that. Allied with that, I would ask you about the Suriname project. And I'm going to ask you, Minister, what will be the added cost to slaughtering a black belly sheep in Guyana and importing it back into Barbados? That is what I will ask you. And since you undertake to tell the truth, there will be no difficulty in the answer. Minister, I will ask you as well about the food production figures. And I'm obliged that you have volunteered to this Parliament and to this country that food production is down. And if I understand you correctly, since I don't understand everything.
It is up 24%, Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Beg your pardon?
It's up 24%.
Up 24, oh, up 20, food production in this year. Lovely, lovely, lovely. I am receiving interruptions from you, Minister, and not from your colleagues. I raised the question of bad manners in here before. No, yes, addressing you, Chair. I have addressed the question of bad manners in here before. You see, I am not sure if the people of this country understand what is happening in their parliament. I am not sure the people understand that this government resists the very idea that they are subject to questions. They resist the very idea that they must give accountability not only to this parliament but to the people of Barbados. They seem to resist that idea. And I will continue.
Honourable leader of the opposition, you need to wind up before
I will wind up.
First question.
But I will wind up in spite of the interruptions.
Honourable member.
This is tyrannical government.
Honourable member, I have said to you before that you need to address the chair and concentrate on your speech. I do not hear asides, and you shouldn't either. Proceed and utilize the time
Your
that
Honor,
you have
I
wisely.
hear the asides, and I respond to them.
Honourable member, when you're addressing the chair, you cannot be responding and directing things to a side. You're addressing the chair, not any other honourable members. You're addressing the chair.
So those are the areas, Your Honor. In wrapping up, I have given the minister notice, and it is interesting that the minister's reaction to my right to do this is so far different from that of his colleagues, who seem worried, who seem upset that questions that the people of this country dare to confront them and ask questions, they must answer. They must give account. They must give account. Do not resist. And Your Honor, I am reserving the right when the time comes to ask those questions of this minister. If it upsets the government that I have dared to accuse them of lying to the people of this country, then so be it. They are lying to the people of this country. I'm obliged to you, sir. And I will shout it, yes.
Thank you, honourable member. I'm sure that the honourable minister and his team will answer every question that you have asked in detail for not just you, but for the people of Barbados.
I hope I will share your confidence, Mr. Chairman.
Chair, let me first start by thanking the Honourable Leader of the Opposition for posing those questions to me.
Honourable member, you are not in a position to direct the chair, and if you have an intervention, then you need to.
I'm appealing to you to let the minister speak in silence.
Honourable member, I am in the chair, and I will allow the minister to speak as you are the one who have interrupted the minister's response. Allow the ministers to respond.
I'm not interrupting him. I'm interrupting the member for St. Joseph who continues to show bad manners.
Honourable member, you are not in a position to do that because you haven't raised a point of order.
Mr. Chairman, I have not yet spoken in this debate. I don't understand how my name comes in.
He's speaking now.
Honourable Minister, proceed.
I hope you go in the chair.
Thank you, Chair.
I got some questions for you.
If the Honourable Leader of the Opposition will let me speak, I will be happy to. The first question was related to the medicinal cannabis industry.
No. I haven't begun to ask my questions. I said I am giving you notice that when the time comes, I will ask you those questions in some detail. I haven't asked those questions yet.
Honourable.
I haven't asked them yet.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition, please allow the minister to respond to your comments. You have raised no point of order, and you just cannot be intervening.
Let me raise a point of order then, sir. Let me raise a point of order, please. In my entitled 10-minute presentation, I said to you, sir, to the minister through you, that when the time came for me to ask questions, that I am merely giving him time to prepare truthful answers. I was not at that point asking the questions. I was telling him, these will be the questions when the time comes. My time for asking those questions has not come. The minister, as far as I understand, is supposed to move to the stage now where he receives questions from his learned colleagues.
Honourable
I have not
member-
asked the questions, so don't let anybody believe that I have exhausted my right to ask questions.
Honourable member, honourable leader of the opposition, you cannot direct the minister how he chooses to respond or how he chooses to make his intervention. Whether you've asked your questions or not, because it's not recorded, everything asked is recorded by this chair. And therefore, if the minister chooses to respond in any form or fashion, as long as it is in keeping with the rules and the standards of this House, he can proceed. That does not stop you from asking whatever questions you need to ask.
Good.
At
Well,
the appropriate time.
Your Honor, let me please clarify that I have not exercised my right, as is the course in this debate, to ask my questions. I gave notice of the subject areas, but I did not ask the questions. So there's no need for the minister to reply now. I intend to ask those questions. In
Honourable
silence.
Minister, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reality of all of this, Chair, is that I have presented the performance of this sector through what work was done in my ministry to aid the sector to achieve growth. I take umbrage to the fact that any statement will be made following my presentation to purport to telling lies to the public of Barbados. And so I want for this House to be very clear that everything that I presented from the document before me was prepared by the public servants of my ministry, who will not indulge in telling lies to this country. I have great respect for the public servants of Barbados, in particular those in my ministry who I work with every single day. And therefore, for the notion to be carried that lies are being told to the public by public servants is something that we would have to examine carefully, because ministers don't prepare these documents. These documents are the research of public servants, information provided by stakeholders, and this information is then collated and put together for the purposes of these estimates. So if it is that there's a belief out there that public servants tell lies, I want to make it abundantly clear this government is no part of
Point
that.
of elucidation, sir.
Ministry.
Point of elucidation. My earlier accusation related to the presentations made by ministers, not public servants. Let us not talk about public servants, because I will have a lot to say about them, those who are fleeing from the public service. But the point is this, sir. My accusation pertains to ministers who have occupied that seat, who have lied to the people of this
Chair,
country.
I believe
and
this
I'm
is
not
my
withdrawing it.
time in the well of
And it did
Parliament
not
to
include
take
you, Minister.
questions.
You're
Honourable
yet to
leader of
speak.
the opposition,
That was my point of
we
elucidation,
have
sir.
to proceed with the matter before us at this point in time. Honourable member.
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman, I think we're all quite flattered at the attention that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, it is on.
Honourable,
My point of order, sir, is it is entirely inconsistent with the rules of this chamber for the Honourable Member to accuse other members of this chamber of lying. He's now said it on several occasions, and I ask that those imputations of dishonesty be struck from the record.
Yes, proceed. We'll have that struck from the record in terms of accusing ministers and members of this chamber to be lying. Please have that struck from the record. Proceed, Honourable Minister.
I'm prepared to take questions now.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You know, if I didn't know better, I would say that Laugh It Off has left from Lloyd Erskine Sandford and come to this Chamber of Parliament. But I digress. Minister, I note first, let me commend you on the tremendous work you're doing in the ministry. It is clear that you have a full and complete command of the ministry. You fully understand and motivate the staff to produce, and the farmers and all of your stakeholders to be able to increase the food production to the quanta that you have, and the whole of Barbados, and having provided food security for us, owe you a debt of gratitude. I commend you. However, Minister, after the commendations, of course, I have to lodge some criticism. The first one comes about markets. You would recall that we did a tour of the markets with the Honourable Prime Minister, and a few of them were certainly in need of maintenance and repair. And we were instructed to get those repairs done as a matter of urgency, because at the end of the day, these are locations that house many of our vendors who help in providing necessary food for people, and it must be of a certain standard. So can you inform this Honourable Chamber, and by extension the people of Barbados, exactly what has been done to improve the markets, all of the infrastructure of the markets, and also by extension the environment that the people that use those markets, both those that sell produce and those that go there to purchase, what improvements have you been able to do since that tour with the Honourable Prime Minister?
Thank you, Honourable Member and Senior Minister. First of all, thanks for the question. The markets I do treat to as an opportunity for Barbadians to actually own their own business. And I take very seriously what we do at the markets to accommodate vendors, but equally to facilitate people who go to the markets to purchase items. After we toured the Palmetto market, I sat with the manager of markets, the projects coordinator, and the permanent secretary. And we looked at how we can possibly treat to the markets in a way where when you enter the market, you enter a space that is conducive to doing business, but equally for storing food. And therefore, we have discussed introducing a full maintenance program, which would run throughout the year in all the markets, not just Palmetto, where we would do paint up, cleaning of the tiles, cleaning of the floors, beautification where we can on the walls, and also make sure that we follow the rules under the Markets and Slaughterhouse Act, which allows for us to be able to control behavior in the market space. A lot of the time, you would find that markets are in the condition that they're in for a number of reasons. And I will let the manager of markets speak to this, but based on the information that I have before me, what I have seen when I toured the markets is that there's a serious problem with controlling people who enter the market to do nothing else but vandalize, use bathroom facilities, destroy them. And I have to be on the front foot with this matter. people just destroy government property. And it is something that has to stop. I've already spoken to the team at the ministry in terms of how we're going to approach this. Certainly, we have to go to the point of making sure that we ramp up security, because the people who visit the market do so innocently, and I don't think that they should be exposed to any person who is in the market to do anything other than business. And therefore, we are working on the Palmetto market. We did also visit Cheapside, and we're working on that as well. Mar Hill Street, we're working on. I'm gonna let we started to work on the roof and fixing the leaking and putting in new ceilings, etc. But what I want to do is to allow the manager of markets to give a comprehensive overview of what is happening with the markets, because there's several markets under us. We have the Glebe, we have Palmetto, we have Mar Hill Street, we got Fairchild Street, there's Baxter's Road. There is 6 roads and several markets that we have, which we will make sure we are kept in the condition that is conducive to doing business. Manager of Markets, Mr. King.
Before the manager of markets proceed, let me also advise to the public officers of the ministry, when you're responding to a question and you're speaking for the first time in this debate, you will need to give your name and the position which you hold in the ministry for the records of this house. You only do it once. That's when you start and you're speaking for the first time, and then you can just speak thereafter. Manager of Markets, you may proceed.
Sherlock King, Manager of Markets. I thank you, Minister, for the question. Respect to the maintenance and so on of public markets in Barbados, we have embarked upon what we call a public markets improvement program. This public markets improvement program identified all the issues that are public markets and strategies designed to make the improvements that are necessary. We recognize in the ministry that public markets provide an area of economic activity for many Barbadians. We also recognize that many locals and tourists alike patronize public markets. With respect to the maintenance and so on that we have been doing so far at public markets, for Cheapside Market, we can begin with Cheapside Market, which since you would have indicated you toured Cheapside Market, we would have, over the years, done some repairs to mitigate a lot of the challenges that the vendors are facing. We have installed a number of awnings to prevent vendors from being exposed to the elements, whether it be rain or sun. We have also done some repairs to the guttering, which when it rains, the vendors are getting wet. We've done repairs to those gutters. We've also done repairs to the main office and to the entrance to the planted area. We've also embarked on measures to remove or to below pests and so on from the markets. We've also met with the vendors and so on to hear their concerns. And many of their concerns relate to some basic things, access to services, painting and so on. And their concerns, we recorded those concerns, and a follow-up meeting is to be scheduled. With respect to Palmetto Market, Palmetto Market was plagued for a number of years with a roof that was leaking, and as a consequence of the leaking roof, the AC units and so on became defective. A number of the stalls also fell into a state of disrepair. What we have done so far for this financial year, we've repaired the leaking roof entirely. We've also installed we are currently installing a new AC system. This AC system was damaged by two things, the ashfall as well as the ELSA. So currently we have procured the AC units, and that is currently being installed. We've also installed a new duct system, and we are also awaiting proposals from the architect with respect to the redesigning and the improving of the architectural features for Palmetto Market. Opposite Palmetto Market, that market basically is a relatively new market, but we had some challenges over the years with the leaking roof. We have also repaired the roof at that market, and as a consequence of that, we can then turn our attention to the repairs of the stores, because as you appreciate, it makes no sense repairing stores and the roof is leaking. It results in the damage to the store. It results in damage to the store. So we repair that roof, so we will then proceed to repair those areas in the market and so on. Aberdeen Jones. We had some structural repairs to Aberdeen Jones. We've done the repairs to the retaining walls and also to the stairs. And as we speak, we began the exterior painting and the refurbishment of Aberdeen Jones Market. And we expect that to be completed sometime in about a couple weeks or so. Six roads, as you may be aware, the minister had requested that we have a complete redevelopment of Six Roads Market. That market serves a critical function for those persons in that area. It is an area where the market butchers and those persons in the surrounding areas utilize the sort of facility. So we are embarking on the construction of a new market. We have done some repairs to the slaughterhouse in the interim, and we are also awaiting the MTW site, which we anticipate will be available for the expansion of the market, so that we can bring along some other stalls and so on, so that persons can function there. The Glebe, for many years, the tenants at the Glebe have complained about leaking roof. The Ministry of Finance has approved the financing to replace this entire roof, and structural assistance has been given a mobilization, and we expect that the entire roof at the Glebe market will be replaced. In the interim, what we have done would have constructed some temporary stalls there, so that when the roof is being repaired, the vendors are not displaced. Those stalls will be there so that they can transfer the business in a very short area, and that once the roof has been replaced, they can return to the market itself. We've also done some repairs to some stores at the Barbara Outdoor Market on Spring Garden, and we've done about 6 so far. And at Baxter's Road, a steering committee has been established by our partner government agency. We're going to be looking at upgrading this facility pretty shortly. It is anticipated that sometime in March or so, we will look at the upgrades, and that should be completed by June. So basically, that is where we are with respect to the improvements we're looking at through the public markets, but we would appreciate that you have to approach it on a phase-by-phase approach. One of the difficulties and the challenge that you have is that you have to work around vendors and staff, and we do not like in any instance to displace vendors. So we try to do it on a phase-by-phase approach, so that the downtime for the vendors and so on is minimized, but we also appreciate that given finances and so on, it has to be done on a phase-by-phase approach, as opposed to trying to do everything at one time. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to add that the manager of markets, when he spoke about Six Roads, the concept that we're using, or we want to use over there, is to create sort of a pork night, similar to what we do at Oysters with fish, so that you give the visitors who are going to be staying at Wyndham, Sam Lord's Castle, or those staying at Crane, or the many villas around St. Philip would have an option to come to Six Roads and bring alive Six Roads, similar to what we do in Oysters.
Thank you very much, Minister. Clearly, you are making some progress. I do concede, though, that it's a little slow, and you need to find ways, and maybe innovative ways, to be able to speed up the work at the markets. What we are looking at in education, certainly, is having opportunities where people can decamp into certain areas where they can play their trade, and then use that opportunity where they have decamped to do the fix and then move back. So I'm going to encourage you to, as we're also here, deconstruct and reconstruct. Think outside the box and be able to expedite the fix at the markets, because for a long time, the markets have not had the attention that they should have had. And we've come to office to fix those problems, and one of the markets is clearly one of those for the average Barbadian, both who use it as well as for the vendors, for both. I want to turn the attention now, Minister, to the Tissue Culture Lab. First, I'd like to say that it is obviously innovative, and I see that you're going to be spending $18 million this year in a Tissue Culture Lab. I listened very clearly to what deliverables and everything you expect that the Tissue Culture Lab will be able to provide for the people of Barbados. But I must suggest also to you that clearly the problems that we're having with having clean material cannot only be Barbados, and it must also have some people in the region that would also benefit from the Tissue Culture Lab. But I didn't hear you say anything about about providing clean material for the region, and I would like to know if you have any plans to do that. And secondly, I didn't hear you say anything as to how long it would take the Tissue Culture Lab to be constructed from the time that you start. So I'd like you to expand on those two. I commend it. I think the Tissue Culture Lab is definitely a good step in the way forward, but it can't only be for Barbados, and I think our regional partners who may not have an opportunity to have such an expensive facility as a Tissue Culture Lab should be able to benefit. But I'll ask you if you have any plans for such.
Thank you, Honourable Member and Senior Minister. Good question. Really and truly, I'm excited about the Tissue Culture Lab, simply because what I do know for sure is that in conversation with the Prime Minister, he said to me, you know, in reality, you are the Minister of Food Security for Barbados. And it dawned on me then what weight I'm carrying on my shoulders. And so with this Tissue Culture Lab, our farmers who have been complaining for decades, we are not now getting complaints from our farmers, they've been complaining for decades. And when I look at the work that the ministry is doing, the ministry has been trained over the years to assist farmers, but you reach a stage, especially with climate change, and I'm gonna ask the Chief Agriculture Officer to speak to this, as well as Mr. Baker and Dr. Sophia Marshall as well, because this one is a big one. The Tissue Culture Lab, yes, where we discussed this at the estimates last year. The Prime Minister's objective at the time was not to go small, to get scale, simply because of where we are. And she always makes the point, if the ships don't come anymore, what will happen to us? And given the fact that I am part of an agriculture task force for CARICOM, which is led by the Minister of Agriculture in Guyana, she made it abundantly clear that in getting scale, we can then look to see how we can do propagation and tissue culture to assist our CARICOM brothers and sisters if in need. So yes, that is part of the objectives. This lab is gonna be such a lab where we can have enough planting material to satisfy our Barbadian farmers, and then equally look at how we can work with our brothers and sisters within CARICOM to provide any assistance for them as well. It's worthy of note that at this Tissue Culture Lab, we're gonna have for the first time in Barbados a seed bank. And I have also heard a lot of conversation about seed bank, but nobody ever really made the effort. We are now gonna have a seed bank in Barbados. And what does this mean? It basically means that, God forbid, if we were to be struck by a storm or a hurricane and crops are destroyed to the extent that we have to get back out there and replant, that seed bank gives us an opportunity to be able to move with nimbleness, to be able to assist our farmers in getting back to planting and helping us to anchor our food security. And I think that it is that type of responsibility that I take very seriously in recognizing that I have a whole nation to feed, and equally our brothers and sisters in CARICOM, if they should call on us, we should be in a position to respond favorably. So yes, the lab will definitely give us the type of scale that we will be able to assist CARICOM members. There are some things, though, about the movement of plants and the movement of goods generally between CARICOM. And generally, when you import stuff as well into Barbados. This has been an issue that I have had to maneuver because I recognize the urgency in getting things done, but I also equally recognize the risk involved in moving crops from one jurisdiction to another. And one of the things that we cannot do is to take risks, especially with pests, and in this climate change environment, you're gonna see increased pests to the extent that many of them we may not be able to control, as well as plant diseases as well. Coming out of the tissue culture lab, the planting material will be clean. It will be clean planting material. But I can't underscore enough the risk we take when people take it upon themselves to move things without first getting permits and without looking at the risk analysis between the two jurisdictions. So that is something that we're gonna have to work on. In as much as the material is coming out clean, we still have to work on the risk analysis. I will let Michael James speak to that and speak to how we can actually assist with giving material to our CARICOM brothers and sisters. Then I want Dr. Marshall to speak to the whole issue of tissue culture and how this lab is gonna benefit us. And then for Mr. Wayne Baker to speak about the construction, the mobilization, et cetera, that is taking place.
Thank you, Minister, for the question. With respect to the whole issue,
Please give your name and...
Michael James, the Chief Agriculture Officer, acting. With respect to the whole issue of the tissue culture material and cleaning it up, over the years, for the last 10, 15 years or so, we've had a problem with our sweet potato. There's a virus disease, and it is not a disease that's only in Barbados, but what they have found internationally, it makes no sense trying to spray them or trying to spray to get rid of this disease. So internationally, what people do is that every year and a half, every 2 years, depending on your yields, you replace that planting material by using clean planting material. And this is what the tissue culture will do, to allow farmers the ability to have clean planting material, and in that way, immediately you up your yields. We have seen it done here by farmers already, where we have offered material and they have seen increases in their yields. Another thing that comes out of this is that we are also going to be importing different cultivars of material, especially out of the International Potato Center, that's SIP in Peru, which is basically the area where most people go to get their sweet potatoes in terms of planting material. And we'll be looking at different varieties, because one way of also controlling pests and diseases is not to plant one type of sweet potato. So you plant different varieties, and those varieties that have tolerance to particular pests, and you plant them with other varieties, that reduces the pest load. So that's one of the things that you were looking at. The other matter relates to the whole issue of, and the minister spoke about this, as being a seed bank. So what we'll be looking also to do is to ensure that we have the local cultivars. You heard about the Bonavis, you heard about the Beijing cucumber. A lot of people don't know about Beijing cucumbers because they don't see them now. So we'll be basically harnessing and keeping those varieties in our seed bank. It does two things. One, in the event of any hurricane or something else, you have varieties or you have seeds that you can plant right there and then. One of the things they have found that when you start to import or you bring in seed or seed material from overseas, from countries that you don't know about or that may have diseases or pests in themselves, you bring those pests to your country. It's best to have your facilities here that you can actually give out some of those planting material, yeah? And once we get that done, and we will have the backup that we'll be testing the material, so you're not only just producing it and say, hey, this is clean, we're going to give it to you. There'll be a testing of the particular material that we propagate here. And if our colleagues in St. Lucia, St. Vincent, who also want sweet potato material, remember, we're not only doing just our varieties here, we bring all types of varieties. So if they need, we can also provide material at a cost, of course. But, you know, these things will happen, and we'll be willing to actually allow persons, not only in terms of getting material, but can also train in how best to propagate the material. Yes?
Good morning, Chair. I am Sophia Marshall, the manager of the Tissue Culture Lab. My chief has covered the questions pretty well. I will just use this opportunity to let you know that the lab, first of all, was established in 1994, and for about 30 years now has been providing quality planting material. The new facility allows us to really step up. Most of the equipment we've been using is just as old as the lab, and the staff are so skilled, they sometimes MacGyver to get the plant material we've been giving to farmers. Many of the farmers have reported back to us that they have seen tremendous increase in yield by starting with the clean planting material. With the new facility, we are not only going to be able to increase the number of plantlets that we produce, but we also would have 4 greenhouses dedicated to sweet potato, which allows us now to go from the lab to ramp up on the station itself. What happens now is that when the plantlets are weaned, we will normally send them to our partnering department at Graham Hall, and they will ramp up in the field. We can actually now do this at the home agriculture station with the greenhouses. So we are looking at producing millions of cuttings. So we will not only be able to supply Barbados, but the region. We have had requests in the past, but we just were not able to assist. Also with the new lab, it is not only just producing the plantlets, but we have increased space for, in terms of our germplasm bank. Right now, we have in conservation something like 20 plus varieties of sweet potato. So the sweet potato that you had last Saturday in your Pudding sauce or your sweet potato pie probably started, most likely started its life at the little lab in St. Philip. So we are able to do so much more with this facility. I just have to take this opportunity just to say as well that we will be expanding. Again, it is not only on sweet potato, we will also have increased varieties of yam. Right now in conservation, we have plantains. We are looking at things like bananas. We will also be continuing with cut flowers, because I don't know how many persons know, but the lab actually started to assist the flower industry. So these are all things that we will now be able to increase our capacity. Thank you.
Good morning. Wayne Baker, Projects Director. I will speak specifically to the question in terms of the time frame for construction. As it stands, the project, and one thing I have to say, we are saying the tissue culture lab is really a tissue culture facility. It encompasses more than just a laboratory, right? Just to reiterate, it consists of course, the facility consists of the laboratory and seed bank, the admin building and beaker facility, receiving bay and ground staff accommodation, greenhouses, generator and generator building, the entrance gazebo and walkways, water retention pond, and the associated site works and infrastructure and parking. The first phase of the project for the entire facility will see the construction of the tissue culture lab and seed bank, the administration and beaker building, the entrance gazebo, site works, the infrastructure and parking, the electrical building, and the water retention pond. So on the completion of this first phase, we expect to have the laboratory fully operational as well as the administration and beaker facilities. This first phase is estimated to take 9 months. The second phase of the project will see the construction of the greenhouses, the receiving bay and staff quarters, the guard hut, and the backup power supply. This second phase, if it can run immediately after the first phase, will take 4 months. So overall, we're looking at a time frame of 13 months or so from start of construction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister and team. My final question relates to the sugar industry. Clearly, Minister, you have taken the bold and courageous move to reimagine and reorganize a sugar industry. And it is historic because to be able to enfranchise those people who toiled in the fields of the sugar industry for years without getting any significant benefit. And certainly people of that caliber have not been empowered since the Tenantry Freehold Purchase Act to the magnitude that you are now proposing. And I would ask for you to be able to expand on exactly how the various people working in the industry would be so empowered by this bold move that you have now embarked upon.
Thank you, Honourable Member and Senior Minister. Well, to be very honest with you, this transition in the sugar industry is a conversation that started way back, I think, in 2007 when we were government. And the project at the time looked at how we could have repositioned Buckley Factory to produce sugar, molasses, and ethanol. At the time, the conversation wasn't so much as it is now on renewable energy, but more on clean gases. And the project in itself got derailed when the government changed in 2008. At the time, the project was forging ahead. The team had actually gone to Brazil to look at how they produce ethanol. And we had a project that was about to transition the industry to the extent that we would have been producing energy. And we all know that with the production of energy, then it gives you that value added that brings the profit, because the industry really and truly had been operating at a loss for decades, I think, since the changes took place at Lomé, and we had lost the preferential treatment for sugar. After the government was changed, the next government that came to power, which was a Democratic Labour Party government, saw the need to derail that project, move it to Andrews, at a cost of close to $1 billion to the taxpayers of Barbados. And they did, in fact, move ahead and borrowed money from ANSA Merchant Bank. I think some $24 million was spent on a project that never got off the ground. The parties that were involved then in this project had set up a company in St. Lucia called Intersugar Partnerships. And that company then was given the project to run. In both instances, there was no enfranchisement model. So that when I became minister and sat with my team to run the various options and to look at the business model, I was not moved because I wasn't hearing in the projects and the options that were available to us how we can in fact treat to laborers with the level of dignity that is required, especially knowing the history of the sugar industry. And we all know that when sugar was king in Barbados, many of the people who worked were slaves. And coming off that type of history, then to have laborers who are of the same ethnicity, working for minimum wage, not having bathroom facilities, having to resort to the bush if nature calls, females at certain times of the month needing to sanitize frequently. Those sorts of facilities were non-existent. And so the first thing I did was to say, look, whilst we are going through this, let us put some bathroom facilities at the BAMC farms. And that is how we then had those mobile facilities created. The next step was then to figure out how we're going to incorporate the laborers, the workers, into a project where they would become owners. I didn't feel at the time that I wanted to just transition an industry that brings new ownership, but at the same time, not real ownership. And I hope I'm not confusing the House with that expression, but for me, real ownership is when the workers actually have a stake in where they're working. That gives a number of things, but the sugar industry in particular, because of its history, I could not have allowed a moment to pass where I had an opportunity to enfranchise workers and didn't do it. And that is the reason why this project turns out to be better than the other two projects that came before this honorable chamber, but equally before Barbadian taxpayers. My view is that when the full transition is completed, for the first time in our entire existence, and I can't repeat that enough, and I would like to think that every single member of this honorable chamber will want to repeat that as well. For the first time in our existence, workers in the sugar industry are becoming owners. And I see that the honorable leader of the opposition is looking at me because he does agree. And I don't know that he can find any question to challenge me on that. Because, I mean, this in actual fact, if I were to repeat his words, we have a public responsibility to care. And, and I also know a slogan, Mayor Cares. So they're both speaking the same language. They're both speaking the same language. And for me, a sugar industry with workers becoming owners has to be the real deal. And it takes a government, and it takes people and members of a government and of a cabinet to care about people, to be able to agree that the workers of the sugar industry should become owners over and above the traditional ownership. And that, to my mind, represents the greatest piece of enfranchisement that ever take place in this hemisphere. And what was happening with sugar, how we were losing money, which I would invite Ambassador Maskell to speak to. And I'm sure he would speak to it in a manner that would allow for us to be able to give the facts without casting blame. The facts are that sugar was being produced at Portville at a price and sold at a price below that, which means that the government had to subsidize sugar each and every time. The producers of sugar cane were demanding their price for sugar cane. So you were also purchasing, I think we purchased sugar cane at the highest price anywhere in the region, possibly anywhere in the world. And then to process it, manufacture sugar and molasses, and sell it in bulk in the first instance to Brocote, which I also stopped. The moment I went to the ministry and saw that we were exporting sugar at cost to us after manufacturing it, I said to the team at BAMC, your first order of business is to stop this. Find a different buyer. And that is how then the reliance on an entity that was supposed to export the sugar started to be ramped up because they were there before I came. And then we recognized that sugar had a real demand here in Barbados. Domestic consumption of sugar is high because of the many businesses that use sugar. And it's not just the consumption that we have at home, but many businesses use sugar as well. And of course, our rum industry, one of perhaps the best in the region. Our brands of rum are retail at auctions for as high as 5,000 pounds. Yes, Mr. Chairman, 5,000 pounds at auctions. So you see the value in our rum industry. And because of those, we were able to look at the numbers and come up with a model that would enfranchise workers, give the public an opportunity to purchase shares, and at the same time allow for private investment to come in and also invest in the entity. And that is how we ended up with BESCO and ABC. But I will invite Ambassador Dr. Clyde Maskell to speak more in detail about how we have transitioned the entire industry, how we have revisited the business model, how we have looked at costs, how we are retailing sugar now, the amount of money we are getting for sugar now compared to previously, and how the workers are benefiting from this model that we have employed. Ambassador.
Morning. Clyde Maskell, Chairman of BMC. First of all, let me thank the Minister of Agriculture for his leadership over the last 3 years that I've been around. But we also have to thank the workers in the industry who participated in the transitioning of the industry. Prior to this period, the industry was not analyzed in a way that separated the manufacture of sugar from the planting of cane. And therefore, it became too complicated in the past to understand what was happening. As a consequence of the findings, we recognize, therefore, that the separation was absolutely necessary if we are going to be in a position to be able to take the load off of the government, who was providing in excess of $30 million. The money to which the minister referred earlier, $30 million, was predominantly a subvention and then the payment of gain. But because of the dire financial state of BMC, it could not pay income taxes for its workers. It could not pay NIS for its workers. It could not pay land taxes. It could not pay land lease rents. It could not pay a number of other payables to suppliers. And therefore, the government's burden exceeded $30 million. In fact, recently, government provided $19.6 million to make payables on behalf of BMC. A year and a half ago, it provided $14.3 million, and we still owe some individuals, so that the burden to government was excessive. But what was most hurtful is to go to Mount Pleasant and St. Philip, speak to ladies working at BMC for 35 years and 40 years who were still getting $361 a week. Most hurtful. And those ladies, when I spoke to them in that meeting, expressed a desire for more, of course. But they did not fully appreciate at the time that we were, in fact, going to increase their wages from $9.03 per hour to $12.50, thus moving their weekly wage from $361 to $500, which they're currently getting. In addition, when we expressed to them that for no cost, they will now be 20% shareholders in two companies, the Barbados Energy and Sugar Company, the manufacturer of sugar, and the Agricultural Business Company. Again, they expressed surprise. But what is even more fascinating is that we have identified 1,102 persons so far who are entitled to this 20% equity in the two companies, so that the 86-year-old man who still lives in St. Philip and left BMC several years ago is now entitled to a 20% share in these two companies. 1,102 Barbadians who worked at BMC are now shareholders in two entities without expending a penny, not or a cent. So this transitioning has occurred because of the work done predominantly, as I said, by workers at BMC. But it is fascinating that it is indicative of the model required to transition state-owned enterprises. No one individual can come from any part of Barbados or any part of the world and believe that he or she has the knowledge when the people who actually work in these institutions are the ones with the knowledge and only need guidance. And as a consequence of that, we have been able to empower workers above and beyond simply coming to work. That is, we ask for their knowledge and we use their knowledge to transition the BMC. It is a model worth employing and emulating all across state-owned enterprises. So that, as I speak to you, the impossible of turning around an entity that in effect was closer to $40 million in losses per year became doable because of a difference in the commercial approach. By way of example, and I'll finish here, Portville was producing a ton of sugar for $1,300, and Portville was then required to package that 1-ton bag in 25 kg bags. And Portville sold the sugar for the same price, $1.30 per kg, after retrieving the sugar from miles away, bringing it to Portville, packaging it, and making losses in that process in excess of $1.5 million, but others benefited. That sugar was then sold for $3.20 per kg at the retail level. That has changed because Portville has now shed itself of that responsibility. and has therefore allowed people to specialize in packaging and has made several other things possible in order to be able to turn this entity around. So that's the beginning. The transition is on this way. Thank you.
Indeed, truly a wonderful achievement. I also commend, and I could imagine the delight on an 86-year-old man's face after having toiled for years in the fields and given up his sweat, blood, and I would imagine sometimes tears, to then be told that he would now be a part owner in an industry that he gave, I would imagine, decades to. Minister, this is an opportunity to turn sweat equity into real equity for the people who have toiled in the fields of this country. I commend you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back to you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you very much, Chair. And good morning to the Honourable Member for St. Philip South and to the team from the Ministry of Agriculture. Agriculture, for some reason that I am still trying to figure out, still excites me without being able to grow anything myself. But I have always admired those of you who work in relation to being able to produce the food that we need. And if it is one thing that COVID and working in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade has taught me, is the absolute necessity for us to get food security. How quickly it is for us to lose the ability to feed ourselves if we don't grow food. So I want to commend the ministry and the team for the work that they've been doing over the past few years in terms of increasing food production. One of the passions I have is to see Barbados being able to export agricultural produce and agro-processed products to other countries around the world. And one of the things that was important to me in engaging with Africa was the fact that in Africa, there is significant importation of agricultural products, despite the fact that they produce significantly themselves. And the product that particularly caught my interest was the issue of chicken. My understanding, for example, is that Ghana actually imports 150,000 tons of chicken. And I felt excited by this because I felt that Barbados has an opportunity here that we could explore. How can we increase the production of chicken in Barbados to the level where we could consider exporting to other countries, whether it was Ghana or CARICOM, etc. What can we do? And so I wanted, first of all, to hear about what are the plans for the expansion and the potential export of that product. And I have a second question leading out from that I will ask when I've gotten the answer to the first. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. First of all, the issue of expansion in the poultry industry, we have discussed with the producers and our stakeholders. A couple of things are happening, and WISE is not specific to export to Africa. We are looking at exporting poultry overall. The first thing that we looked at was how we can reduce the costs to the farmers. and put incentives in place in order to induce them to get back into poultry production at scale. The producers of poultry in Barbados then came up with the decision to agree to expand the production of poultry through contemporary or modern facilities that would accommodate chickens in an environment that is getting hotter and hotter, so that you would have the cooling facilities within the tunnels that are going to be created. And then we had to tie this into our legislation as well, because the export of poultry required anchoring the SPS legislation, as you do know. And then on top of that, then we have to improve our labs, which is being done in this new financial year. And when we do all of those things, then we are able to provide the cruise ships, first of all. The export of poultry, which is happening but not at the type of scale that we want. And then what I discussed with the poultry producers is not strike at exporting poultry to Africa, because the numbers that you just mentioned, we're not going to get the scale. But if, of course, we move the skills to Africa, then we can produce in Africa as well. And that is the conversation we're actually having with the poultry producers. One of the major producers had agreed with me that we can look at how we can take advantage of the opportunity of moving the skills to Africa, starting with Ghana, and then perhaps see how that goes. I've been speaking to Mr. Phillips frequently about how we can do that. And then if we can leverage the partnerships that will be available to us, this is a further enfranchisement. My whole mission as a minister is not just to be a minister walking away at the end of a career saying, yes, we served well, but I don't see wealth being transferred as it should. And throughout my entire time at the ministry, I've always looked to see how we can create enfranchisement. And so it's no error that we have a lot of our work, including some form of enfranchisement. So that model to work with Africa is one that I've discussed with the poultry producers. The challenge that we face was high cost of feed. There's a mill that is likely to start this month or early next month, which will give us a new state-of-the-art mill. And that in itself has projected that the price of poultry feed will come down. Because of that mill coming, others have asked to enter the space. And whilst I don't want to dilute the space, I feel that there's an opportunity for another one. They have been knocking at the door for a while, and I've said yes. Once you are ready, we're willing to facilitate. And then the feed company that is here already, which is Pinnacle, they have now started to move with incentives, as you can see, where they've signed off with the dairy farmers to help defray the costs of feed. So competition sometimes makes a big difference. And I'm saying all this to say that, yes, we are increasing production. If you go across by Coal Ridge, you will see there are new tunnels going up. There will also be an enfranchisement model in St. Philip, where we've looked at an area in St. Philip, and through the feed program, we are going to introduce poultry farming, where these farmers would actually participate in the running and ownership of a tunnel that can give us well over 200,000 birds at any one go. So those are the things that we're doing to ramp up production. There is another hatchery coming, and I believe they might have already started. That is then going to give us another option for the purchase of hatching eggs. And once you can increase the production of hatching eggs, then by dint of doing so, you increase the output of poultry overall. Trust I've answered your question, Honourable Member.
Yes, and it leads me to my follow-up questions. One, you outlined that we are looking at the expansion of our production and then our exports. And to succeed, you said you discussed and dialogue with the farmers.
Honourable Member.
Oh, sorry.
We hold your follow-up question.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report progress to Her Honor the Deputy Speaker and beg for leave to sit again.
The question is, I do now report progress to Her Honor the Deputy Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Honourable members against, we say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Back.
Thank you. Members, your chairman has reported progress and has asked to leave to sit again.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this honourable chamber be now suspended to 12:15.
All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Or the question, sorry, I beg your pardon. I beg to move that this sitting be suspended for 10 minutes. 15 minutes, excuse me. The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, until 12:15. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This chamber now stands suspended for 10 minutes. 15 minutes. You got 10 there. Be seated. Oh, beg your pardon. Hold on to it again. Look at me now. I have to treat you well. This sitting is resumed. When the suspension was taken, this House was in standing finance committee. To that, it shall now revert.
This Honourable House is now in standing finance committee. Honourable Member for St. James South, you were on your second question. You can, on your follow-up question, you can resume. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Before we went on break, we would have touched on the issue of Barbados ramping up to be able to look at the export of chicken and to take advantage of some of the opportunities that exist around the world and near home to be able to earn foreign exchange and increase the viability for chicken farmers here in Barbados. And in your response, Minister, you spoke about the necessary conditions that need to exist in order for us to succeed. And you'd spoken about the expansion of access to good poultry feed at a reasonable price. And you also spoke about the fact that Barbados needs to be able to meet the sanitary and phytosanitary requirements in some of the markets that we're interested in, and also the issue of labs, having the labs. I'm just wondering if you could expand on the issue of the labs, what it is you're doing, and anything else that is needed to get us export ready, as well as you spoke about speaking to the farmers. It seems to me that if we're going to be successful in the export of any of our products, that we have to be training our farmers in relation to standards. We have to be training the people in the agro-processing space about standards, the issue of meeting certain requirements, the consistency of supply, the consistency in the quality of the product if we're going to be successful. So I would like to hear what are the plans of the ministry for the issue of the labs, the SPS, and helping the industry to improve its performance to meet these standards so that we can be successful in export of our agricultural produce.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Well, there are two labs, actually, that we are working on in this financial year. The veterinary services and the government analytical services lab. Both are represented here, so what I would do, I would ask Dr. Trotman to speak to the lab at Vet Services, and Mr. Beckles from Gas to speak to what is happening there at the lab. But in terms of the export of poultry, you do well know that we've already passed two pieces of legislation to facilitate that and to bring about the standards that are required. The third piece of legislation to complete the SPS measures is the food safety, which is, we have had consultations with the stakeholders. We've had consultations with the Ministry of Health. We've had consultations with all the other ministries involved so that we can harmonize right across all ministries what is happening. and to equally make sure that when the legislation is passed, it doesn't create a hindrance to the stakeholders who are involved. So we took feedback from the supermarkets, for example, people who are involved in food production, etc. Once the legislation is completed, passed, and then we have the regulations in place, then it starts to speak to the standards that we have to uphold in order for us to be able to adapt the SPS measures properly, and then to be able then to look at how we can look at markets where poultry then can be exported. But as I said earlier, we have done some work with the cruise ships, and that is, for me, low-hanging fruit, and that is where I want us to continue focusing. I would let Dr. Troutman speak about the lab, what is happening, and I will also ask Mr. Beckles after him to speak. Dr. Troutman.
Thank you very much, Minister. Good morning, Mark Troutman, Chief Veterinary Officer. As far as the lab, the veterinary services laboratory is concerned, we've had a bit of a setback, but we are now trying to get back operational, contracting an engineer to as I probably made clear to you previously, the existing laboratory is not fit for purpose, and it needs to be significantly improved at the very least. And that's what we're doing right now. We've contracted an engineer, a quantity surveyor, to refurbish the existing building for the time being, so we can get working again, providing support services. The laboratory can provide a pretty comprehensive suite of tests that we do need to have in order to support the export of animal products, all animal products. We have the suite of tests that we can provide are things like microbiology, both food microbiology and clinical microbiology. We can do histopathology, we can do serology, we can do molecular biology, PCR testing, which is very critical in certifying that the animals that are being slaughtered for export are safe, are free from certain diseases. And it can also look at other microbial agents as well too. So all of these support laboratory tests that we need to be able to satisfy the export market. We are going to be hopefully back on track providing those services fairly soon once we get the work. So right now, the priority of the laboratory is to get back in operation to support the industry as much as possible. We do have plans for further expansion in terms of the kinds of suite of tests that we can provide, such as testing for certain kinds of contaminations, testing for mycotoxins and those types of things, veterinary drug residues, are areas that the international community requires us to do in order to be able to support the export market. So that's where we're at right now. We have other plans for further expansion of the laboratory. But as I said, right now, the priority is to get the laboratory working again, because we've had a setback, again, stemming from the structural and environmental challenges that we've had with the laboratory over the years. Okay.
Good afternoon, Philip Beckles, Scientific Officer and Head of Microbiology at Analytical Services. GAS basically has a focus on two main areas. One is strengthening our capacity currently and also dealing with some institutional issues. Specifically, we're working with ICA to strengthen our quality management system, as accreditation is going to be a requirement for poultry export. And we are also working with the International Agency for Energy to strengthen our technical capacity, receiving instrumentation like LCMS to do pesticide analysis in feeds and poultry, as well as pesticide residues in terms of charm instruments we've received. Unfortunately, we've also had some lingering issues as well with the building. The building itself is over 40 years old. It's been there since 1980, and it was designed for engineering of that time, and it was also designed for the vision of what was going on then. So currently we're doing a lot more now than what we were doing then in terms of the number of samples, the types of samples, and the increase in number of monitoring programs that we are asked to participate in, and not just over decades, but over the last few years. For example, in 2015, we were doing like 2,400 samples a year. We've moved to over 4,300 in 2023. So we're realistically doing a lot more. And because of that, we are kind of running out of room. So we are investigating, expanding to properly facilitate the testing that we're doing. And we anticipate that this expansion will include an improved microbiological wing to for molecular biology, some of the areas for which Dr. Shropman was just speaking as well, sample receipt area, lifts, loading bays, and some of these issues, because as it stands, when equipment comes to the laboratory, there's no facility for actually getting it in. So we need to create a facility that actually allows for heavy equipment and specific equipment to be brought in. So that is the plans going forward to assist with the poultry sector. But the current situation is that we have a poorly functioning air conditioning system. So it requires it has a number of issues. It's poorly insulated, and one of the tool chillers is not working. So the issue is that is an issue not only for workers, but also for some of the instruments, as some of the instruments can be sensitive to changes in temperature and humidity. So we're actually addressing these issues has become a priority, which requires an air conditioner overhaul, which means the panels will have to come off the roof, chillers will have to be replaced, and the staff will have to be temporarily relocated. We have identified an area, the NSI lab, which is to be retrofitted for us to continue to do what we do there while the air conditioner retrofitting is going on. So we currently are still analyzing samples, and we're trying to find ways to continue that once the AC is being dealt with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Another area that I consider to be of great national importance is the issue of the care program, that backyard program for the ordinary citizen. As an MP, I can tell you that one of the challenges that I have faced when I wanted to start urban gardening in St. James South was to discover that a lot of our households no longer eat the carrots and the beets and the sweet potatoes and things of that nature. That we have now created a population in Barbados that prefers macaroni pie and chips and things of that nature. And so we have the problem of NCDs, which I no doubt you'll hear more about that later. But for me, it was of great personal concern because in order for us to build food security, we have to be able to eat that which we grow. And we have a dysfunction now between what the citizen prefers to eat and what they need to eat in order to remain healthy. Therefore, I was excited by the prospect of the CARE program, providing households with the opportunity to be able to grow some of that food that they really, really need. So I would love to have an update from the ministry on where we are with that program, what it will do, what it will offer to the citizens, and if he could possibly project into the future and tell me how soon he thinks we can start it. Minister?
Thank you, Honourable Member. Project CARE is one that I also have deep, deep passion for, simply because this is a project that was conceptualized in the ministry during the COVID shutdown period. And what we were looking at is how we can get people utilizing their time during the shutdown to stay within the curtilage and at the same time do something useful rather than sit in the house all day long. So we came up with Community Agriculture Response for Enfranchisement, and acronym is CARE. Project CARE started with us giving out baby chicks to people who were in need, so that right across Barbados, we were able to share with people who were either unemployed, or at the lower end of the poverty ladder. And what we did was to procure baby chicks from the hatcheries, and those were distributed to people. We did well over 10,000 at the time. And then we started to look at how we could engage corporate Barbados. And that is when Massey came on board with us as well to help provide things like seedlings, seeds. And we also then looked at how we can incorporate the service clubs. We did have a meeting to that effect to incorporate the service clubs as well. And we then spoke with the former Director General of ICA, Dr. Chelston Bradford, to develop a model type of a aquaponic small farm that allows for us to grow tilapia and vegetables as well at the same time. This project I want to see moving. It is chaired by our colleague, the Honourable Member for St. Michael East. And what I want to do this year is to get that project moving where we would distribute the 10 aquaponic farms per constituency and ramp up from there so that those people who are unemployed or those people who like home gardening or community farming can participate. The cost of that is set at $1.5 million, I think it is. And we have before the cabinet a paper which is speaking to how we can get the funds to get that project going. And once cabinet grants its approval, then we are going to roll out that project to include the aquaponic farms, and then we will engage people also to construct small coops that can hold approximately 15, 20 baby chicks so that people can also have some baby chicks as well, and continue then to work with those communities similar to the one in your constituency. And I think your project is a model that we can follow so that people can also come out in the various communities and participate. The allotment gardens as well, in the paper that is before cabinet, it speaks to the allotment gardens. And we're looking at Pine Basin, and we're also looking at how we can incorporate the schools as well. So then that you have the schools participating. You do know that we now have in our possession 50 shade houses or greenhouses that came in from Guyana. And those are also in that cabinet paper. And once those are rolled out across Barbados, then you would see a ramp up of Project CARE, as well as seeing us then moving agriculture back into the schools.
I also wanted to commend you on the enrollment of, I believe, Master Gardeners. Are they're part of that particular project or a different project?
No, you're correct. The Master Gardeners as well, and ICA has facilitated the training for us. So that this is like a sort of a train-the-trainer program where these Master Gardeners will be trained and then they would assist people in the communities so that they also will learn how to do gardening, similar to what you have in the UK. So you get the allotment gardens, you get the people trained, you have I call them the master gardeners, who would then work with the communities as well to make sure that the project doesn't fail. So all of that is about to happen. We did the cabinet paper, and we're likely to get that kick-started this year early.
And my last question, I noted that the ministry in its estimates has identified that it wants to go digital and to use digital technology and so on in a number of aspects of your operations, and I found that fascinating. I'm sure the public would be happy to hear how you are incorporating digital technology to help us be good with our farming and with managing the ministry.
Yeah, well, the project that we are doing at Home Agriculture Station is one that will allow for us to facilitate the type of digital farming that we envisage, but equally at the ministry as well. What I would do is let the Chief Agriculture Officer speak to this. There's a lot that we can achieve through taking this approach, and it's one of the things that we are doing to modernize the sector, really.
Thank you for the question, Honourable Member. Digital agriculture is a very far-reaching topic, and it seeks to not only look with the use of drones and stuff like that, but you're also looking at GPS mapping, so you're not just going to be going out there and looking at a farm, but you can stay from where you are and take pictures of the area. You can look at identifying where a particular pest population is in receipt of a particular crop. You can have a more accurate sort of amount of what is growing. So you can look at accurate yield projections by doing that. You're looking at staying home and actually turning on your sprinkler system within your greenhouses. You're looking at using the photovoltaic to drive your pumps that will wet your particular gardens and whatever. So it's a holistic approach, even the use of artificial intelligence. It is something that we will have to explore some more, because when people hear AI, they think of artificial intelligence and not just artificial insemination. It's a bit different. But when you're talking about AI, this has a very wide scope that you can use within the agricultural base. And these are things that we will be looking at. We ourselves are learning. I don't want people to think that we just go up there and we know everything. But because of the new technology, this is something that we need to harness to use within the agricultural base. So these are just some of the examples that will be used in the whole digitization of agriculture, if you may call it like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I certainly appreciate the answers that you've given. I'm looking forward to the success of Barbados, continued success of Barbados in agriculture.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Philip North.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to all. To the Honourable Minister, I particularly enjoyed your presentation. From what I am seeing on the ground and I hear, I think you're doing mostly a good job. I'll leave it at that. I have 3 questions, and I'm here thinking which ones to leave for last, but I think I'll leave the one that bothers me for last most. The first one, recently you, as a ministry, announced the increase on the bounty for monkeys. I'm an animal lover, and there are a few of us out there like that. The question I have, I'm aware of the issues with monkeys in terms of harvesting the crops before we get a chance. Has there been any thought into providing food space for the monkeys, whether it be in the gullies and everything? I mean, we all know the rhesus monkey has an intelligence of a 5-year-old child. And the thought of shooting 5-year-old children bothers me. What are we putting in place? Basically, we took the monkeys' land. We all know that. Where we are living is where they were living. What are we putting in place to ensure that whatever y'all left behind is provided for?
Thank you, Honourable Member. The question is quite timely, actually. And I'm glad that you raised it, because there's a huge misunderstanding about what is happening with the bounty for the monkey hunters. There are a couple of things we agreed on. First and foremost, I could not have attempted to put a program in place to deal with monkeys without first getting past the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central. And given the fact that I've been able to work with his ministry, and I would have preferred if it was the other way around, to be very frank, because then he gets to make the decisions on what happens. But the truth is there's no flat out going out to cull monkeys as people are trying to project it. Let's get that very, 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 very clear. When we set up the bounty hunting program, what we looked at is how we can work with the Wildlife Reserve. And they were in the meeting with us. The Honourable Member for Christchurch East, the Minister of Home Affairs, was also in the meeting with us. And we looked at how we can take a very humane approach to dealing with the problems that have been reported to us with troops of monkeys destroying crops, fruits on people's trees, and in some instances going into people's homes. So the Wildlife Reserve and us, we had previously set up a hotline where if people saw troops, they can report them. But then we got more and more complaints from farmers who said that their crops were being destroyed. Wherever I go in Barbados, whenever I meet farmers in Barbados, one of the questions I'm continuously asked is, when you're going to deal with the monkeys? So we came up with a solution that, first of all, lend itself to being extremely careful and humane in dealing with them. And the Wildlife Reserve will continue to do the trapping. A lot of monkey trapping takes place in Barbados, but it's not really an easy fix, because after a period of time, once you've captured a certain amount from a troop, then you don't get the others because they don't bother to go in the trap. And then the other thing we looked at is how we can then get the hunters who are already out there, and they've been out there long before all of us who came in 2018. And those hunters have to pay for equipment, for ammunition, everything. And they have made a request to help us deal with this problem if they can get an increase in the bounty. So we gave them really what is pretty much a $5 increase, because the bounty was $15, then it went to $20, and now it's $25. And they have been told in no uncertain terms that when they are going out hunting, it must be done in accordance to what we have agreed on, and we set up a set of protocols. For example, they can't hunt monkeys in gullies. So the monkeys in gullies are pretty much safe. They're not supposed to go in gullies like Welchman Hall Gully, etc., and that is written in the paper that we presented as well. They are not supposed to go in neighborhoods loosely and cull monkeys either. This has to be a very controlled, well-organized thing. But certainly on farms where crops are planted, and certainly in areas where there are fruit trees, where there are orchards, etc., they will go in an organized fashion to do either the capturing or the culling. So it is not a case of Barbadians walking around with a gun, as someone tried to project on brass tacks on Sunday, which I thought was a fairly loose statement, to be very honest. We don't have people walking around loosely shooting monkeys, so that is a no-no. And the person that did it with extreme wickedness, because clearly that person has an interest in monkeys for their own commercial activity. But you have farmers who are losing crops, and that is their commercial activity as well. So how do we balance the two? And if a person seeks to convey the impression that people are loosely going around shooting monkeys, even to convey that impression to the world, to the Barbados Police Service, is a very sinister act, because that is not what is happening, and it ought not to have happened the way the person conveyed it. And I make absolutely no apologies for saying that we have respected all the people who came to us to give their opinion about how we should handle this, and we ended up with a final project that allows for us to bring control to the situation that is taking place with monkey troops going all across Barbados, and people have been complaining to us. At the end of the day, our constituents are Barbadians. Barbadians that repose their trust and confidence in us to do right. And if we are having a problem with monkey troops, we're not seeking to wipe them out, and I don't want anybody to get that impression, but we are seeking clearly to bring balance to it. And at some point in time, some will be culled, but certainly not all, and not in any disorganized fashion. Trust I've answered your question, Honourable Member.
Except for what are you doing for the monkeys in terms of feeding?
The Ministry of Environment is returning to planting fruit trees in the gullies. And there's a project that they're currently working on. The project is already in place. So that is the reason why we're not doing any capturing or culling in the gully spaces, because they're planting fruit trees. They have a trees project that will allow for us to get more fruit trees and for the monkeys to be able to find food.
Thank you very much. I feel a lot more comforted after your intervention there. The second question I had is not really so much a question, but if you choose to answer, because I want to get to the crux of the matter. With respect to pesticides and the control of pesticides, I had applauded you. Yes, you put the containers in the fields and so on, but how do you, and this is for my own education, how do we control pesticides effectively? Many of you would have seen my Facebook post. I say 6 + 8 dogs to gramoxide poisoning in 2 days. How efficient is the Ministry of Agriculture's control of pesticides in terms of who is allowed to buy them and so on?
Honourable Member, thanks again. That's an extremely good question. We had prepared a cabinet paper to look at the controlled use of pesticides. And we had also gone as far as looking at how certain types we would actually recommend banning. There is a project within the ministry that is being managed by the registrar or deputy registrar of pesticides. And the board basically is looking at an overall program. What you saw at River when we did the launch was only part of a whole program. And then since then, we have put out some PSAs on radio telling people how to use pesticides and what they're supposed to do. After using the pesticides, how you dispose of the containers and things like that. It also spoke to how pesticides can harm and why one has to be careful. The Chief Agriculture Officer can speak to this project and give you more details in terms of the use of pesticides, but I would like to hear more about how the dogs were poisoned with gramoxone, because I'd like to see what is happening there, and if we need to intervene, then we will.
Thank you for your question, Honourable Member. The whole idea of pesticides, as any AIDS, as you know, so anything it kills is there to kill. How do you adequately go about making sure that persons do what they should? Now, it starts with your application. So we don't just, persons not allowed to just bring chemicals into use. But you always know that there's somebody who's willing to take a chance. We have no control over that. But chemicals, or if somebody wants to bring a particular pesticide, it is brought in. We look at the whole pesticide. How does it move in water? What is it supposed to do? How does it, would it damage animals, including frogs, not just dogs and whatever, any type of animal. And based on that, we will do a write-up and say, well, yes, this is allowed for this particular crop under these conditions. Now, very often, you know, Barbadians like this thing that once it can kill a particular pest, they can abuse it to the sense that if 1 teaspoonful is good, 3 teaspoonfuls is better. And that is something that we've tried to make sure that we get people to understand that you stick to the right rate, because using incorrect rates not only damages the environment, but it also lends to what we call resistance to the particular chemical. So if you keep on using the chemical at high rates and whatever, you will find that when you spray it, the particular pest will not die, right? So that is one. Two, we've looked at, as the minister said, looked at making sure now that we are more visible. So we looked at the triple rinse method. You should not reuse chemical containers. We've tried to get out there to encourage persons that not only you don't use the containers, there are actually alternatives which might be more organic. So we look at the use of soaps, the use of ultrafine oils. So there are a number of different products, the use of other insects, biological control, to control a particular insect instead of having to use chemicals. So that is another way that we go about it. The minister, as he said, we are also looking to have what we call a list that would entail that certain pesticides cannot be bought by normal household persons, all right? Or if they're bought, they're already mixed. So you can't go then to mix them. So you just use it from the can. And the other area that we are very interested in is actually now that some, to spray a pesticide, be it on a farm or whatever, you will have to be trained. Okay, so it's no longer that you can just pick up somebody and say, okay, hey, fella, come and spray my ground for me. That, unless you have a certification that you know how to mix the chemical properly, you know how to dress properly, you're not in Elsa Clench. So some persons still go and still in Elsa Clench, you know? It's not like that. So those are the things that we are now looking to introduce. So hopefully, as the time goes on, we will have more of these being introduced, but it's going to be buttressed by a really good PR program, because we have found that you can't just introduce things without alerting persons or giving them the knowledge that these things will be introduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The final question, or I'm pleading here now. I came from St. Philip North, St. Philip on the whole, with a heavy burden on my shoulders, not only for myself, but several of the residents. And you would know St. Philip North is a large farming area. I am used, and I'm going to talk about me first. I am used to paying X amount of land tax every year for the last umpteen years. I opened my land tax bill last year and almost had a seizure. It moved from $3,300 roughly to $8,300. I called my neighbors who are also farmers, some of them, one of them moved from $475 to $4,512, and they are legitimate farmers. I remember I have 25 broilers, 6 layers, 5 lettuce in the ground, lots of coconut trees and a few fruit trees. I do not make a profit off of any agricultural business. My neighbors, however, that's their livelihood. The incentive, this is something that needs to be looked at. This does not lend well to incentivizing farmers to do what I personally feel it was a mistake. I went because I don't want to throw around what little weight I have. But I went like a normal citizen and made the relevant calls, one of which was not the prettiest. I was treated so badly, but anyway, that's another thing. And some of my neighbors are adamant that they're not paying the land tax. I have started to pay, but God knows $8,000, that's more than I'm making here today, this month. I think that needs to be looked at if you're going to right now I am being, I think from my calculations, being taxed for non-residential property. I live there with my 3 dogs that still live in, that I bought. I have pleaded with the minister responsible in finance. I really got nowhere, so I'm asking you to kindly speak to your cabinet colleagues, land tax department, I don't really care, something, because people are suffering with these rates. I am aware one of the residents, this is not in my area, but one of my friends, his moved from 900 to 1,200, not agricultural at all, but that's just on an aside. And as far as I'm aware, land tax was supposed to decrease. I don't know if you have a comment, but this is the only place I can find to bring it up in the public sphere, and I'm waiting to hear if other members of the public have the same issues.
Well, what I can say to you that is a matter that has taken me by complete surprise. So therefore, I know that you mentioned you did speak to the relevant minister, and I will have a similar conversation on the matter. I do not think that it is anything that can be resolved. We came to government to govern. We came to this place to make sure we are doing what is right by people. There may very well be a good explanation. What I will do is ask Mr. Connolly to comment if he knows anything about what is taking place there. But equally, I'm prepared to address the issue. And all I can do at this point in time is ask you to hold. Let me get to the bottom of it. Let's find out what is happening. And if it is something that needs a fix, then I will make the necessary recommendation.
Honourable Minister, that question really should reside in the Ministry of Finance. And
Point of order,
therefore,
by the way, Mr. Chair.
and Honourable Member, let me finish.
No.
That question predominantly resides with the Ministry of Finance, which is not in the well right now. And any further comments should be, I think the matter should be picked up directly with the ministry.
Can I comment, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I have tried to bring up with the relevant ministry. Part of it is because they're perceiving it as agricultural land. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the Ministry of Agriculture. So in my mind, I have a right to bring it up here. The minister was quite right in saying he will find out and investigate for me. So I beg to differ on your opinion. I have even gone to the Ministry of Agriculture to look about rebates. So it does belong in part to the Ministry of Agriculture.
Yes, Honourable Minister, it's not my opinion. It's at the end of the day, it's what the chair has ruled. And I have said to you, Honourable Member, that the matter can be referred and directed to the Ministry of Finance, the relevant minister. I understand what you're saying, but it is inappropriate. We ruled similarly yesterday, and we have to be consistent with our ruling. Thank you.
Well, I wait with bated breath to see the Ministry of Finance in that well. I pray and wait. Anyway, that brought to the end of my questions. I still want to say for the record that this belongs partly in the Ministry of Agriculture. I have tried with the Ministry of Finance to no avail. To no avail. But at least now it's in the public sphere because other people are suffering like I am. And that's the end of my comment.
I did ask Mr. Colney, who deals with services, who deals with rebates and concessions, etc. He may be able to bring some clarity to the situation. And if I ask your leave to ask Mr. Colney to address the matter so that agriculture is cleared where this is concerned. And if we need further intervention, as I said, I'm prepared to make the necessary steps towards resolving the issue, if in fact there is a major issue.
Thank you, Minister. Proceed, Mr. Connolly.
Arlie Connolly, officer in charge of Extension Services. The land tax rebate is one that we offer through the Extension Services unit. We basically prepare a letter indicating that the person is a farmer and that the land is in agriculture. It must be a minimum of a quarter acre. And we did all that we had to do from our end as the Ministry of Agriculture. There are times that we prepare letters and for some reason BRA do their own thing and will say no to farmers that are legitimately farming on 4, 5, even 2 acres of land. So I will have to say that that matter is out of my hand and rests with the BRA and Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Honourable Member for St. James Central.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again.
The question is that I do now report progress to Her Honour the Deputy Speaker and beg for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Members, our chairman has reported progress and has asked to leave again.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that the House be now suspended for lunch until 2:15.
The sitting has been suspended to break for lunch. The question is that this sitting has been suspended to break for lunch until 2:15 this afternoon. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. You think the ayes have it. This session is now suspended until 2:15 p.m.